It's already pretty quiet. But welcome to week 7. For the couple of you that just came in, Varun had an announcement on leadership. Will you post that on Discord, I'm guessing?
I will repost it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Keep an eye out. TLDR, we're opening up leadership positions. Also, if you want a shirt and didn't get one last week, we'll do that after. Yeah. Just remind me if we forget. So last week's, okay, that didn't work. Last week's, question, Coke won. That's pretty cool, I guess. Yeah, I'd agree, I think. I think Chayton says he doesn't care.
I don't like soda.
That's a good answer. That's a very good answer. Yeah, and then the next question, more 50-50. We could probably have some heated debates on this. I like pineapples on pizza, personally. It just tastes good. It's sweet. It's nice. Yeah. Okay. This week's gonna be week 7, unit 7, which is AI ethics. Sorry, I'll have a lecture. Yay! Love it. Okay. So we do have a synthesis question due on Tuesday, and all of them and the project due on Thursday, as normal from this week onward. Hope you guys enjoyed that break, but we're back to the regular schedule. Yeah, and then the attendance form. Again, it's in the Discord if you didn't get it just now. Yeah.
Okay, so the presentation today is going to be on AI ethics. Let me see if I can figure out how to go. Okay, I'll just click this. Okay, so AI has become like a lot more pervasive in our lives, and it's like cool to consider ethical questions. So put up your hand if you've used up like ChatGPT. Okay, put your hand up if you've like used like Siri or Alexa. Okay, yeah, pretty much oh, you guys haven't used Siri or Alexa, okay, yeah. So basically like AI has become like a lot more common and it's like a lot more integrated in our everyday life. But then there's like also a lot of ethical questions that come up with using these types of machine learning models and like AI models as well. So like let's say like in Seattle, like homelessness is a big issue, right? So let's say that you were working with trying to solve homelessness and you were trying to like allocate resources to help as many people as possible. So let's say you had like 100 homeless people total, but you only had space to house like 50 of them. What factors do you guys think you would prioritize in terms of like choosing who to house out of those 100 people? Does anyone have something that they would look for? You could consider something like age, like if someone's older, maybe they deserve housing more, or maybe if someone has kids. Okay. Does anyone have any ideas of like what you might use to prioritize housing? Okay, yeah, because it's like a pretty tricky topic, I guess. So, need, yeah. But then, like, what makes someone need it more than someone else? Do they have housing? Yeah, that's a good one. So, like, if they don't have housing, or like if they've been unhoused for a long time, then maybe they would need it also more. And also maybe if they are like have been cycling between being housed and unhoused, then like maybe getting housing might help them more than like someone else. But it also brings up the questions of like how do we make those decisions and what if we choose wrong? Because a lot of times AI could mitigate those risks because it can consider like a lot more data than humans can. But at the same time, it could also make the wrong decisions if you just put it into the hands of programmers. So for today's agenda, we're going to be going over some key terms, stakes, and then copyright when it comes to AI, generative AI, and surveillance capitalism and data rights. So AI is basically when a computer uses like math or logic to simulate the types of reasoning that people use to learn new information and make decisions. This is the definition from Microsoft. And some other definitions that are interesting to look at are Neuro AI, which is also sometimes called weak AI, which is an artificial intelligence system which is designed to perform a specific task or set of tasks within a particular domain. Some examples of this are AI like Amazon's Alexa or Apple Siri, which can answer questions, play music, or control like smart home devices. There's some other things like recommendation systems. Does anyone here use like YouTube's recommendation system or like Netflix's recommendation system? No? Yeah. Yeah, so how good do you guys think it is? Like, raise your hands if you guys think it's good. Okay, yeah, because these recommendation systems are basically like using your data and seeing like, hey, like, do you watch this a lot? Do you click on this a lot? Are you like zooming into like an Instagram post a lot more if it's like on this type of content? And then it helps give you that type of content more. So this is kind of like what Neuro AI is. It's very specialized and it doesn't have the ability to generalize knowledge or perform tasks beyond what it's like specifically programmed to do. And this is in contrast to AGI, or artificial general intelligence, which would have the ability to learn, understand, or apply knowledge across a wide range of tasks and domains like a human. So on the other hand, yeah, generative AI refers to artificial intelligence that creates new original content by remixing and transforming existing data. These are things like text generation, for example, like OpenAI's GPT-3, which can help generate like human-like text based on your prompt. So if you ask like ChatGPT, like, hey, like tell me what color the sky is, I don't know, it'll give you like a textual answer. And there's also things like image generation, like tools like DALL-E and DeepArt, which create new images by combining elements from existing ones and transforming their like input images into different styles as well. So what is AI at its core? AI systems are designed, built, and maintained by humans and relies on mathematical concepts. In Kaggle competitions like Plug, we showed how like linear regression, which is like a machine learning model, uses a mathematical equation to model the relationship between input features and the target variable. So this is an example of where you could use something like the equation like y equals mx plus b, and then say whether like some variable, like whether someone has like dementia, like whether you can model that based on input features. And training data also has like a lot of bias though, because a lot of times like humans are the ones who made these data sets and who did the actions that are getting like data collected on. And this often means that a lot of times if you have AI training on human created data sets, it will reflect societal biases. And a lot of times it'll make these biases a lot worse. For example, or I'll say an example later. But yeah, and another place where bias can come from is not only training data sets, but it's also like developers, because people who are developing these models also have their own biases, which impact how they like collect, label, and process data. And another bias could also be deployment bias, which you guys might have heard of some machine learning models, where after they get deployed to the public, there'll be like a bias that'll come up from these models learning biases from humans that it's interacting with after it's been released. And bias is not like inherently bad, but when the preference is related to a certain group of people and the bias is like only targeting certain types of people, this can make it become discriminatory. So here are some types of sources of bias. So the first type is hidden data bias, where you can see that, you know, if there's like a facial recognition system, the algorithm could struggle to identify people with like darker skin tones due to the overrepresentation of lighter skin tones in their data set. So during COVID, I remember there was like some facial recognition scanner that our school tried to have to try to help us like check in the beginning. And one issue with this facial recognition scanner was that it got all the like white or like lighter colored people correctly, because it was like so used to training on those types of features. But for like all the people of color, it was like really bad. So for me, I think it would confuse me with like 20 other Indian people in my school. But it was a lot more accurate for people with like lighter skin tones. And the second thing I think is differing amounts of data. So voice recognition software has a lot less accuracy for people who have strong regional accents. So like if you like have a really strong Southern accent, then maybe like it might not be able to understand you. But also if you have a different accent, like if you have an accent from growing up in a different country, then this could also make it harder for you to use things like Siri and Alexa. If any of your guys' like parents, or if you guys have any accents, you might have noticed that sometimes if you ask Siri or Alexa a prompt, it might not be able to understand what you're saying. But if someone else asks Siri or Alexa a prompt, it will be able to understand it, just because it hasn't been trained on that variety of data. The third thing is quantifiability of features. So one example of this is like an AI credit scoring system, where a lot of times if someone has like a very unconventional financial history, like maybe they've moved a lot, or they have like a lot of different credit cards and like they spend different things with different credit cards, it could be a lot less effectively measured in terms of how trustworthy they would be in terms of their credit score, versus someone who might be more traditional and employ more traditional financial behaviors. The fourth thing is feedback loop. So I think, do I bring that up later? Okay, yeah. A feedback loop is basically where if you have a training data that has this bias that's implicit in it, then it could keep on repeating that feedback loop later, where it like shows those biases more and more often. And the last thing is malicious data doctoring, where if someone is using your AI, they could purposely like put in false reviews or put in false information to try to skew your algorithm to favor things over others. So how many of you guys know about Tay? It's like a Twitter chatbot that Microsoft released in 2018. Okay. Does anyone else know about Tay? Okay. Yeah, so basically Tay is like Microsoft, they released like a Twitter chatbot in 2018, and this was designed to help like help it learn like conversational understanding by interacting with humans. So basically what happened was users could follow and interact with this bot called Tay and You on Twitter, and it would tweet back and it would learn from users' posts. And Tay was like set up with like a young like female kind of persona, like similar to like Siri and Alexa. And it was supposed to like appeal to millennials. However, within like I think about a day, Twitter users tricked this bot into posting things like Hitler is right and like I hate Jews and like Ted Cruz is the Cuban Hitler and stuff like that, just because it would feed in that information to the bot, and it was designed to learn from people, right? So then it would like be like, okay, like that stuff is true, and then it would start like tweeting all this misinformation. So they ended up pulling the chatbot. But keep in mind, like this is Microsoft, right? So they probably had been developing this for like a long time. They probably didn't realize this was going to happen, but this is an example of deployment bias, where after they deployed their AI chatbot, they saw that those biases came up. And this is like kind of leads into like what stakes are there with AI. And as AI is being increasingly used to like allocate resources and do these important tasks, there are a lot of problems that could pop up. Especially because AI is not just like assisting with tasks anymore. I think people aren't just using it to be, a little bit more efficient in like writing an email, but AI is it's representing a really central role in making decisions that affect people's lives and societal outcomes. For example, for the automated loan eligibility, AI models are now analyzing applicants' financial data to determine who is eligible for loans or who has access to credit. The second example is predictive policing, where AI algorithms predict where crimes might occur and who might commit them, which guides law enforcement to stay in some areas. And you can see how this could be problematic, right? Because a lot of times, like if you look at the data, if a region has like less socioeconomic status, then maybe like there might be more crimes that get committed there. But then this could also mean that law enforcement just end up putting more people who have a lower socioeconomic status into prison just because of the past data. Another example of this is employment algorithms, where AI systems screen job applications and rank candidates, which impacts who gets hired. Does anyone know about Amazon's hiring algorithm? This was also in 2018. Okay, basically, like this is kind of like a crazy story, but Amazon used this like AI hiring algorithm to help them like be more efficient with who to hire and who to not hire. And basically their thought process was, hey, if we put in all the data of who we've hired in the past based on like all the applicants, then we can get these AI models to be able to filter out what applicants we want into our system, right? So basically they had their models like trained on all their current employees and then see what future employees might be the best. Can anyone think of like a type of bias that might occur with a tech company? Yeah. Gender bias. Yeah. So basically, the majority of Amazon's employees were male, right? So basically what it trained on was the fact that if someone was a woman, they were probably going to be less of a good job candidate than if they were a guy. So it started penalizing people's resumes. So if you had something like women's chess club lead or like girls who code or something like that on your resume, you were penalized for that because it basically was trained to be like, hey, if someone's a woman, they're probably not going to be as good of an employee because they are like less represented in this data set. So that's a good example of like how like gender bias, which is present in that training data set, could end up impacting like future applications of AI that's trained on that. And then the last example is fraud detection, where AI could identify potentially fraudulent activities, which helps prevent financial crimes. So these are all like problems of algorithmic bias, where AI has a big tendency to extend and amplify biases that humans have already, because it's training and it's learning from our data, and our data is inherently biased because we're people. And because of that, it ends up making those biases like even worse if you're not careful. So that's why things like responsible AI are super important. What responsible AI is, it's basically referring to the development and deployment of artificial intelligence systems in a manner that prioritizes like ethical principles and frameworks and makes sure that like it's more transparent, accountable, and inclusive. And this is really good theoretically, right? Because it's like good to see that, hey, like AI technologies are implemented fairly, but it's really hard to do this in practice. For example, for Amazon's training data set, right? You could say, to fix this, if it's like 80% men, 20% women, let's just chop off like the 60% of men and have 20% men, 20% women. But then you would say like, hey, like this could be unfair because what if in that 60% of men, there was some other metric that was important for them to be like hiring people over someone else? And how are you choosing like which people to chop off of your data set and which people to leave in, you know? And then now if you're like screening for gender, then maybe you can screen for like religion, right? Maybe we should make every single religion evenly represented. And then maybe for screening for religion, we should screen for like the 15 other factors that people people could have that like might be slightly underrepresented. So it's really difficult when you talk about like data set manipulation and when you talk about making your data sets like more fair, because if you screen for one type of factor that maybe like impacts me, maybe I'm not thinking about like some other factor that impacts someone else that could make the data set more fair. And also at the end of it, if you screen for everything, you probably will have less data. And it's a general thing where the more data you have, the better your model gets because it's able to train on more information. So yeah, here's Microsoft's 6 principles for responsible AI. I think they have, fairness, reliability, privacy, inclusiveness, transparency, and accountability. But as I said, there's a lot of challenges with this. For example, one ethical question I heard last year is, does everyone know like what a self-driving car is? It's like a car that can drive itself. Yeah. There was like one ethical question I heard like last year, which was basically saying that if you had to design a self-driving car, right? Let's say that your car was like driving off a hill, and like you were like in the foot between your car like driving off the hill or not, right? And either you could drive off the hill, or if you swerve back onto the road, there's like a pedestrian standing in your path to go back to the road. So either you can drive off the curb and you die, or the car should swerve back into the street and like be like the person inside the car would be safe, but then the person in front of you would die. And then this is like a question that, you know, it has no right or wrong answer. Like, who thinks that the person on the street should die? Yeah, no, just kidding. Who thinks that the person in the car should die? Okay. Yeah. So yeah, it's like a little bit more for person on the street, but you know, a little bit less for person in the car. But yeah, it's very difficult to tell like an AI model like, hey, you should do this versus you should do this, because like as humans, we also don't really know what we would do. So that's why I also think it's like important for like CS majors to like learn about ethics and stuff like that too. But yeah, these are like some challenges in like making AI responsible, is like bias in AI, the complexity of AI models, and all that kind of stuff. Another issue in this topic is IP and copyright. I think one example of this is where Gen AI is being used. For example, in the AI creator economy, we're seeing a lot of people using AI tools to make like creative content and like products and stuff like that too. And basically what this creator economy is when people are using AI or LLMs to generate new content and ideas. And this is different than human creativity, because with humans, like if we think of something new, it's completely new, right? It's just based on our imagination. With Gen AI, it's training on human creative thoughts in the past, and it's basically replicating those types of patterns and processes to make something else based on what's already been done before. So it's basically copying behaviors that it's been trained on. And on one hand, this is really cool because you could train your own like AI like bot to be catered to your needs. But on the other hand, it's not like new creativity, right? So have any of you guys ever like tried using like DALL-E or like image creation software? Okay, yeah. Have you guys ever seen like those? There's like some videos that like people will be like, "Hey, generate this image of a person," and they're like missing an arm. I don't know. Yeah, I've seen like some videos like that. But yeah, so basically like these types of LLMs, they are like interesting and fun to use, but like there's obviously like some issues where like, you know, if a human saw that, they would be like, okay, like they're missing an arm. But like if an AI model saw it, they would be like, hey, like, you know, there's like eyes, ears, there's a face, you know, it's a person, you know what I mean? And yeah, how have you guys used Gen AI in your life? And where is this being used specifically? So within like art and design, people are using this to generate and brainstorm new ideas for creative output. Within music composition, AI can be used to make melodies and preliminary composition. With grant writing, this is like one really big thing, because a lot of times grant writing can take a really long time, and this can be used to help speed that up by making like project plans. And also another thing with AI is that it's really good at consuming a lot of data. So versus humans, it would be able to probably find like errors and stuff like that that humans might not be able to find. And by expediting this oh yeah.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
Something you mentioned earlier. It's more like a thought thing. It's like you drew the distinction between like humans generating thought being okay and inherently creative, and then like an AI model somehow not having that creative aspect. But then, do you think an AI helping a human generate something is creative or not? Like, is it a spectrum? Is as soon as you integrate something non-human, is something becomes uncreative? Like, is there anything on that?
Yeah, I don't know for sure that like one is creative and one isn't creative. I do know like in Hollywood with like the whole like protesting thing, what the agreement they kind of ended up landing on was that as long as it's just like humans being a little bit assisted by AI and not just like fully AI generated stuff, I think that was like the kind of thing. And yeah, I think the other thing with AI just generating something on its own is that it has been trained on human creativity. So I feel like you could say that it is creative, but yeah, I don't know if I can say like fully sure like if it's like 50% assisted by AI, it would be like creative or not. Yeah. But yeah. Yeah, another thing with like generative AI or with like grant writing is that if you made this process like a lot more faster, then it would help maybe like more nonprofits like be able to do a lot more work faster as well. So that would also help in terms of that. And in terms of Gen AI mechanics, so generative AI often relies on human created content, but it doesn't properly like credit and compensate the original creators, because keep in mind like these types of artworks are generated based on so much different artwork, so it's hard to help credit every single person whose art was trained on. And some people argue that these practices like undermine the creators' rights because, you know, they made this artwork and then now this is being trained on it. So that's definitely one issue, is that making sure that these like intellectual property or IP rights are being respected in the advancement of AI, and acknowledging and compensating these creators. So the next topic is, what is a deepfake? So a deepfake is basically a fake piece of content which has been fully like generated to maybe show someone like doing something, or like a picture or a video of something, to basically manipulate a real person's voice, image, to have them say something or do something different. So this is an example of a deepfake where it generated a picture of Tom Cruise, and it looks a lot like him, but this isn't actually him. Like this entire picture is fake. And then another example of a deepfake, I don't know if I could, this is a video. But basically, the voice is pretty bad in this video because AI voice synthesis is still like developing. So I think voices are still developing right now, but maybe in another 2 years, this will be more believable. But basically, Facebook didn't remove a video of Nancy Pelosi that was like doctored. So then there was this artist called Bill Posters who posted this on Facebook. And it basically showed how Mark Zuckerberg was like boasting about how the platform owns its users. It's like a fully fake video, but yeah, we could probably watch a little bit. I don't know. Oh, I don't know if the audio's working. But yeah, just take my word for it that like that basically it's. I think the video was saying that like the platform owns its users and that like, you know, they're like taking advantage of them. And yeah, this is kind of to show how like people can be manipulated by social media. And yeah, this software was using video dialogue replacement software, which this has also been used to have like political leaders have a sing along in some like music videos as well. Okay. Let's see if I can find my mouse. Oh.
It's also needed on your laptop.
Oh, okay. Oh.
I wish I could keep telling you that our mission in life is connecting people, but it isn't. We just want to predict your future behaviors. Spectre showed me how to manipulate you into sharing intimate data about yourself and all those you love for free. The more you express yourself, the more we own you.
Yeah. But basically this is like something that an artist put up because they were like, hey, like if you're not removing this video of Nancy Pelosi, like I'm going to put this video of you and let's see how you treat this, you know? And then Facebook was trying to be like, you know, we're going to treat these two videos the same. We're just going to put a tag saying that it's probably fake. But yeah. So yeah, this is kind of like, it's like funny, but also it's like slightly scary also, especially as we consider like future elections, because I think eventually it might reach a point where you're like every single piece of media that you consume, how are you going to tell if it's real or if it's fake? Because in this case, like the voice is pretty fake. You can kind of tell if you've ever heard Mark Zuckerberg speak, this isn't him talking. But as these like voice training algorithms get better and better, we probably won't be able to tell the difference between like him talking in real life versus, or in a video that he actually produced versus like him talking in this. And yeah, the Hollywood thing I think we brought up earlier, but this is like another prominent case, which was a really heated debate. This actually got resolved, I think, in September of this year, because they like went on strike for like 148 days. But basically they were saying that actors needed to consent to having their voices or like their likeness being used, or being digitally replicated. And that's why there was like a strike, because the performers were protesting, saying that if against the unauthorized use of AI to generate new digital performances, and we're also demanding that they were fairly compensated and also fairly protected. And I think they ended up coming on this agreement where they prioritize like human rights over AI. I think the article I read said that like humans won this first battle against AI or something, but yeah, it's interesting to see how it'll go on. And then yeah, here's like the current status: celebrity deepfakes, industry strikes, and SAG-AFTRA is the Hollywood example that we were talking about. And then yeah. And then the next topic we're talking about is surveillance capitalism. So surveillance capitalism is like a modern way for companies to make money by collecting and using personal data. How many of you guys think the internet is free? Raise your hand. Okay, raise your hand if you don't think the internet is free. Okay. Why do you guys not think the internet is free? Yeah. Okay. That's true. Are there any other reasons you guys think it's not free? That's right, yeah. Yeah?
Companies are okay with you using their services for free because they can collect data on you and sell it off to those who are interested in it.
Yeah, exactly. So this is like the what surveillance capitalism is. It's basically like the new modern way for companies to make money. It's by collecting and using your personal data. So companies like Google, for example, or Facebook and Amazon, they gather data about what you're doing online and your activities, and they sell this data for people to be able to, maybe give you ads and other types of things. And that way they can predict your behavior to create targeted advertisements. So yeah, this was originated by a professor at Harvard Business School. Her name is Shoshana Zuboff. Like the term was originated, where she basically described this process as when human experiences are being converted into data by these companies to make money. So yeah, like how many of you guys, when you guys get this pop-up, just like accept all cookies? No? Oh, yeah. I do sometimes, I don't know. But yeah, but the internet is like a really good example of this, where it looks free because technically everyone can use the internet, but they collect data on your users' online activities by selling targeted advertisements based on this data. And the revenue that's generated from these ads supports the operation of the free service, which allows users to access it without any direct charges. So yeah, as we like navigate through the digital world, it's important to realize like how many of our online activities are being monitored and recorded. I think a lot of times, like if you've ever Google searched on something like, I don't know, top or something, then maybe on Instagram you later saw a lot of advertisements for a top. And that's because all these platforms are like sharing and selling their data to each other, which kind of goes to show how every single interaction that we have online, whether it's uploading a video or conducting a Google search or even browsing the web, could reveal very personal information about you. So even if you're browsing privately or using incognito modes or engaging in harmless online activities, your data could still be like tracked and analyzed. And another issue is that even if you think your data collection is anonymous, it can often be traced back to you, whether it's like your device's IDs, IP addresses, or browser fingerprints. There's also this concept called cross-referencing data, where if a company is collecting data from you from different resources, even if that one data set is very anonymous and like maybe they wouldn't be able to figure out who you are with this one data set, if they have multiple data sets from multiple sources that maybe like, share a couple features about the same person, you can really quickly narrow down to like who that person might be. Like for example, maybe like one would have like your email address and then one would have like your home address, and then maybe both of them have like some overlapping thing like your 5-3, I don't know. And then it like uses that to figure out that, hey, like this is the same person. And then before you know it, they have like a whole personal portfolio on like your interests, who you are, where you live, what you do. And that's how they're able to personalize these ads and sell that information. And this data can also infringe on privacy rights because it can get you to buy things that maybe you usually wouldn't. Like maybe you wouldn't buy like a fridge, but after you got like 5 different ads from like 5 different sources on like the same fridge, then maybe you'd be like, okay, like let me like buy this fridge, you know what I mean? Because it's been like targeted to me so many times. I've seen this ad so many times. Maybe there's like catchy music or something, So, but you could say that I guess this is infringing on your privacy rights because it can be used to get you to buy things you wouldn't otherwise or feed you misinformation. Does anyone know what like an echo chamber is? Okay. You guys don't know what an echo chamber is? Okay, no. Wait, what do you think an echo chamber is?
It's like when you get an ad for something, you're interested in something, and then the algorithm recommends you're interested, so it gives you more of that, look at it more, you can do more of that, and the process repeats it for like all you see.
Yeah, exactly. So basically like all types of like recommendation algorithms and like social media platforms as well, they can really evolve into echo chambers because if you're like, they're designed to maximize your user engagement. So a lot of recommendation algorithms will start only showing you content that really aligns with your beliefs because that's probably what you're going to interact with the most, right? Like if you see an opinion that you agree with, then you might be like liking that post, saving that post, sharing it with other people. And then like the platform's like, okay, like, like this person really likes this type of content, and it'll keep on pushing your like content that matches your existing beliefs again and again until it creates kind of an echo chamber and reinforces what you already believe. And that's like another reason why like for the recent election, like 2020, a lot of people thought that the election might have been rigged, and And that might be just because like they were in an echo chamber, probably in social media and in their own communities, where they only saw other people who also believed like, hey, this election was totally rigged, and like social media platforms as well. And then they thought that like everyone was voting the same way as them. And then if they saw like a different type of outcome happening, it makes sense why they might believe like, hey, like this thing was totally rigged, because they saw everyone around them also believing that it was fake. And even from the other side, like if you believe something else as well, and if you're surrounded by a lot of people, and then if you see a lot of people voting in a different way, it's probably just because you weren't interacting with those types of people as well. And that's why like some people, you know, genuinely believe the election was stolen from them, not to be like political. And then, yeah, this is like another case example is Cambridge Analytica, where they used an app to harvest data and psychological profiles for political influence. And this type of data misuse had like a lot of implications for like democracy, because by having these like profiles on you, they're able to manipulate political landscapes in democratic elections. Basically, yeah, it allowed for highly targeted political campaigns that significantly impacted the democratic process, and it showed how much tech companies can exploit your personal data. And that's why there was like so much debate on like privacy rights and data security, and it also underscored the urgent need for stricter regulations and more transparency in how your data is like collected and used. Yeah.
Add a little context.
Yeah.
So it's crazy to me because I talk to people about this and they don't know what happened. But so one of the reasons that they're able to get so much data from Facebook was basically what they did with their app was it was on Facebook, and Facebook has this process of allowing developers to make apps that are integrated into Facebook. But what it did is people developed a survey, and obviously they collected that data. And then they paid the person who filled out the survey like $1. So you're like, okay, well, that was like an exchange. But then it also, through a loophole in Facebook's policies, collected the data of all of that person's friends and had access to all of their profile data and metadata about their preferences, etc. And so they did that for a lot of people, and then they used that. They were paid millions of dollars by the Trump campaign to target voters in specific swing states, such as Michigan, which flipped red by a very narrow margin. And they used that to do very specific targeted advertising on people that they described as neurotic, because those people were the most likely to switch the vote. And they could tell who was neurotic from the data that they harvested. Quote unquote neurotic. They did a psychological analysis using machine learning to do this. So I just find this super interesting, and like nobody knows about it, like or even remembers that it happened.
Yeah, it's crazy how much information can be collected on you and how much companies can figure out about you just based on like your online activity. And like they literally do put you into like profiles and groups of people in terms of like targeting you for different things. So yeah. And then that's why like, yeah, it's an interesting question to see like what ways you think surveillance capitalism, like there are obviously all these like negative impacts as well, but which ways do we think that this could benefit us as well? And so one example of this is how Google had like this model where they were using extra behavioral data to advertise to other companies, which helped the internet be free. So that's one positive of surveillance capitalism is like, hey, you're exchanging your cookies, but also you get the internet for free. So that's nice. Another example of this is that you could be like a lot more engaged and satisfied by companies, because if they are able to improve and personalize their services to you based on your data, then you're getting fed information you like. For example, like if you use TikTok or if you use Instagram Reels, then you're probably like very happy with your For You page because it's all information that you like to see. And that happened from you like interacting with the model and like, you know, helping the model figure out what you want to do. And that's why like a lot of people's like For You pages are very like personal to them, right? So like my For You page is probably not similar to like anyone else's For You page in this room because it's trained on my data and seeing like what I like to do and what I don't like to do. There's also a lot of economic benefits of this as well because the free services of the internet. And this benefits customers who might otherwise not be able to pay or might not be willing to pay for these services. And yeah, I think one important thing though to emphasize is that consumers should be aware of the trade-offs of what they're doing, because a lot of times people don't understand exactly how much their data is being used or what they're giving up to be able to being able to use these types of free services. So the next thing is our data rights in the future. So there's this EU law called the General Data Protection Regulation, which mandates how organizations use personal data. And this uses all types of data processing and means, And the legal basis for this is that the GDPR stipulates that your personal data usage must be lawful, so which defines things like your contract performance and fraud prevention. And it also emphasizes the importance of your consumer awareness and vigilance regarding your personal rights. So this is kind of like the chart of how the GDPR individual rights kind of go. But basically, individuals have the right to submit like access requests and obtain information from the organization about how their personal data is being processed. So if you guys use something like Instagram, you guys can download your data from Instagram and see like what data they're collecting from you. And then I know also like when I had like this one like teacher who downloaded his Spotify data and actually calculated himself like what his most like listened to song was, and it was actually different than the song that Spotify said that his most like listened to song was after like, you know how at the end of the year Spotify tells you like your most like listened to songs. It was actually different. So yeah, I mean, you can like figure out what your actual like Spotify recommended songs are versus like what the algorithm is telling you. And this could be because maybe like that artist was like paying Spotify something, or maybe, you know, it was kind of skewing the thing because maybe he was like listening to the song for like 1 second or something every time you opened to Spotify. There could be like something like that going on. But yeah, it's very like, I feel like empowering to be able to look at your own data and analyze it yourself and figure out like what's going on there. There's also like you should be able to withdraw consent to these types of platforms. That's like another right that you should be able to have. And I think another one that I thought was interesting was data portability, which is basically saying that individuals should be able to obtain the personal data that they have previously provided to the organization in a way that's like structured and easy to read. Because if you download your data, but if you have no idea what the data is saying, then there's like no point. It's like a lot of contracts and stuff like that. If it'll say like, hey, like, you know, check this thing to be able to use the platform, a lot of people don't read it. So I think that those types of agreements that you're checking off when you use platforms, like for example, like social media platforms, should be a lot more easy to read. So that way you understand like what you're agreeing to do. And yeah, what measures do you guys think are needed to maintain a balance between technological benefits and data privacy? Does anyone have any ideas on this or thoughts? I'll give like a few seconds. Or out of these ones, do you guys like any of these the most, or think any of these are the most important in terms of maintaining your data privacy? Yeah.
I think the right to be forgotten, as weird as that sounds, it's like the idea that it's okay, I want to sign up for the service, I'm okay for them using my data, but at some point I want to leave without leaving a trace. That should be easy to do. Like, you shouldn't hunt for the delete account button, and when you delete it, it should be gone.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because like, especially if you guys like ever like upload anything onto the internet, even if you delete it, there's always like traces of that on there, and people can always like find it somehow. That's like how like the FBI, I think, if you look at a lot of cases, if someone like sent a text message to someone and like deleted it, or if someone called someone and then like deleted the record of their call, they can still find it because everything you do on the internet can be traced back somehow. So yeah, I think that would be like a really cool thing, is if you could actually like delete all your information from the internet and like make it not being able to be traced again. Yeah. In terms of takeaways for the future, things that you guys could do to protect your own data privacy would be like voting for politicians who say that they're advocating for data privacy rights. I think one issue with responsible AI and this whole AI like field is that it's such a new area and space, and a lot of politicians don't understand tech. So they don't really understand like how to regulate this or like what to kind of do among that. So that's like one problem, is that a lot of politicians you're voting for might not even fully understand what AI is, or responsible AI, and like how to protect that. So I don't know if there's like newer politicians, you guys could vote for them. Another idea would be using browsers like Brave or search engines like DuckDuckGo. I use DuckDuckGo to avoid tracking and protect privacy, but keep in mind like it could probably still like, follow you. And then also maybe not just immediately like giving up all your cookies and stuff like that too. Could be good. And then yeah, here's some policies that are in the works. I know, yeah, China has regulation on recommendation algorithms and stuff like that too. And yeah, oh, that's like, there was like also another interesting thing where China had like this machine learning model which they were trying to predict if they could tell if someone was a criminal based on like their face. And they actually ended up getting like like it was like upwards of like an 80% accuracy rate, and they were like, this is crazy, right? Like they can tell based on someone's face if they're like a criminal or not. But actually what ended up happening was that it was just training on the people's collars, because if people had like a business collar like t-shirt, then they were like probably not a prisoner. And then like a lot of the photos, they all had like the prisoner t-shirts on, and that's what it was actually training on. But then they like released this model being like, yeah, like we can tell just based on your face if you're going to be a criminal, you know. But yeah, it was like incorrect. So that's like another issue with like AI ethics, is that a lot of times like your data sets could be training on something that actually isn't what you would want the data set to be training on, to be able to, like, it's not actually accurate. Another example that we brought up in Kaggle Competition Club, another plug, no, just kidding, is that like during the COVID-19 pandemic, if you had an algorithm that just said everyone doesn't have COVID, boom, you would have a 99% accuracy, because 99% of people don't have COVID, right? So then you could say like, hey, I just developed this model and it has like a 99% accuracy. But in reality, it's not actually just saying that everyone doesn't have COVID, it's just putting everyone into that bucket, which is why it's important to like look at things like true positives and false negatives and stuff like that, which is basically saying that if you look at everyone who didn't have or if you look at everyone who did have COVID, how many of those people are being accurately classified? And since everyone who does have COVID is being classified as someone who doesn't have COVID, then it's not an accurate model. So yeah, these are some future policies, and then that's the end of the presentation.